Shalom. Today's lesson is going to be what language did Adam speak? Because when you watch these different movies, going back in history, when these so-called movies that these so-called scholars put together, they'll try to make you seem like when man was first created, they all they were doing was just grunting. They had on loincloths, and they were just a barbaric, type of people. They also teach you that they were white people, which is a bunch of crap. But in this lesson, we're going to go into it and show you that Adam spoke. He had a language. He was set up in order, according to the powers, the angels, Yahweh and the angels. Um, they were clothed, you know. So what this lesson is going to be called or entitled is going to be called "What Language Did Adam Speak?" Because the reason why when they make these movies or documentaries, they make it seem like man was grunting, and on all fours, and uh, like a barbaric type of person, is because they're trying to incorporate themselves. The Edomites, so-called white people, are trying to incorporate themselves into being Adam, Eve, and all the people from the beginning and the original man, so you can understand. So we're just gonna get right to it. I have a little article here called "The Origins of the Hebrew Language" by Jeff A. Benner. This is gonna be like a guide, to the lesson, and I have other scriptures that we're gonna go through, and I'll break it down for you, just to show you that man was not grunting. They weren't on all fours. They weren't in a beastly state. As I mean, they were in a lower state, but they were made greater than the animals that were at the other animals that were created by the powers in those times. Okay, so it says Hebrew is classified as a Semitic or Shemitic, really it's Shemitic, from Shem, the son of Noah, language. Was Hebrew just one of the many Shemitic languages, such as Canaanite, Aramaic, Phoenician, Akkadian, etc., that evolved out of a more ancient unknown language? Or was Hebrew and the Shemitic family of languages the original language of man? And that's exactly what it was. Hebrew was the original language of man. Going back there, all these other languages, Phoenician, Akkadian, they all stemmed out of the Hebrew. They all have Hebrew characters. They all are pronounced a little different than the Hebrew, but the origins of everything goes back to the Hebrew language, or Ibar. According to the Bible, all people spoke one language, Genesis 11:1, until the construction of the Tower of Babel in southern Mesopotamia, which occurred sometime around 4000 BC. They said they have BCE here, before Christian era, before Common Era, but really it should be before Christ. That's what the word BC means. During the construction of the Tower of Babel, the Most High confused the language of man and scattered the nations, Genesis 11:7-8. That one language was scattered. And then from that point, man was scattered on the face of the whole earth. Lord's will, I'll do a lesson on the land of Shinar, Mesopotamia, and all that, and show you where, around the area where Noah landed, the ark landed, and people from that point started spreading around over the earth. Lord's will. It is at this time that the Sumerians from the land of Sumer, known as Shinar in the Bible, Genesis 10:10, speaking a non-Shemitic language, appear in southern Mesopotamia. It is believed that the Sumerians are related to the people living between the Black and Caspian Seas, known as the Scythians, ancestors of Noah's sons Japheth. Yeah, so these people, these Sumerians, they were actually Japhites, brown-skinned people, all right, that were living in the area of the so-called Caucasus Mountains. All right, these people are Japhites. They're not Israelites. They're not Edomites. They're not anybody. They're Japhites. All right, dark-skinned people or brown-skinned people. It says, at approximately the same time the Sumerians appeared in Mesopotamia, another civilization emerges in the south, the Egyptians. The original language of the Egyptians is Hamitic, from Ham, the second son of Noah, and is also unrelated to the Shemitic languages, which really they're all interrelated. All these languages are interrelated because they all come from the Hebrew. When the Lord confounded the language, the language that he confounded was the Hebrew. Those languages that these people spoke all stem from that one language. Okay. It says, during the time of the Sumerians and Egyptians, the Shemitic people lived in Sumeria and traveled west into the land of Canaan. It would appear that after the Tower of Babel, the descendants of Japheth traveled north with their language, the descendants of Ham traveled southwest with their language, and the Shemites traveled west with their language. And you see here they have like a description or a depiction You have Babylon. This is the land of, of Babylon, Calneh, all these different cities that where man was at, and the Japhethites went north, Shemites went west, and the Hamites went south, and they spread out even further than that, because these, remember, this is just like a guide, they're not 100% positive on how everything went down. This is just a guide of what took place at that time. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. Genesis 11 and 9. What was the one language spoken prior to the Tower of Babel? When the Most High created Adam, he spoke to him. Genesis 2:16, indicating that the Most High, or the powers, gave Adam a language, and this language came from the powers, or from the powers himself, which we're going to get into that. Not through the evolution of grunts and groans of cavemen, see? Because they're trying to paint that picture that these grunts and groans of cavemen were being done back then, because they're trying to get away from the fact that the original man was so-called black. They're trying to portray the picture that they were white, that anything great in civilization or in history was white or red, like the so-called white man, the Edomites. When we look at all the names of Adam's descendants, we find that all the names from Adam to Noah and his children are Hebrew names. So that right there is a dead giveaway. When you look at the lineage of Adam that chose a line, they were all Hebrew names, meaning that their name has a meaning in Hebrew. And it gives you an example. For instance, Methuselah, Genesis 5:21, is Hebrew for his death brings. Now, I didn't get a chance to look this up. I just look it up just to confirm it, but it makes sense. It says Methuselah is Hebrew for his death brings. It says the flood occurred the year that he died. So around the time of Methuselah, that's when the flood came upon the earth. So that's what they're saying. So like I said, I have to do a little more research, on this particular issue here, just so I can know for certain, But the point here being that his name was Hebrew, that all these names were Hebrew names. It is not until we come to Noah's grandchildren that we find names that are of a language other than Hebrew. For instance, the name Nimrod, Genesis 11:18, who was from Babylon, Sumer, Shinar, and possibly the Tower of Babel, is a non-Hebrew name according to the biblical record of names. Adam and his descendants spoke Hebrew. In addition, Jewish tradition as well as some Christian scholars believe that Hebrew was the original language of man, and it is. That's why it was called Ibar. That's why the Lord caused Salah, which was one of the descendants or the grandson of Shem, to call his name Eber, his son's name Eber. Why? Because he was going to keep their language from the past. Through that lineage or through that line, they were going to keep the language of the past. That's why all their descendants were named what? By Hebrew names. All right. Now, this is Genesis, the first chapter. We're going to jump down to the 20th verse to show you when the Most High created everything, the man and everything. It says Genesis 1:20, and the power said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and man as well as beasts and fowls and creeping things all have life. So in the 5th day, or the 5,000th year of the creation, this is when the Lord created all living things, and fowls that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven, and the powers created great whales and every living creature that moveth. Is not man a creature? Does not he move? It says, which the waters brought forth abundantly. Out of those waters, out of the seas, came man and beasts and creeping things and fowls and fish and all of that. After their kind. See, everybody has a certain order. You're not going to have half woman and half fish like that dickhead bubble-eyed blackfish will have you believe. The mermaids were the creation of the sons of the Most High, had sex with the daughters of men, and therefore you have what's known as a mermaid, and that's the product of that union, which is a bunch of bullshit. And every winged fowl after his kind, and the power saw that it was good. Now, in this scripture, it doesn't say that it was actually man, but by extrapolation and having some kind of intelligence, you know that it's talking about man. But just in case people want to get stupid, we'll go to 2nd Ezra chapter 6 and verses 47 down to 52. Upon the fifth day, which is the 5,000 year of the creation, thou didst thou settest unto the seventh part where the waters were gathered, that it should bring forth living creatures, which we just read in Genesis, the first chapter, fowls and fishes, and so it came to pass. For the dumb water and without life brought forth living things at the commandment of the powers, that all people might praise thy wondrous works. So all living came out of those waters. Then didst thou ordain two living creatures, the one thou callest Enoch, Anawak, which means learned. This is an actual man or men that were created back then, and the other Leviathan. So let me know that when the Lord created in the beginning, he created these creatures, these living things that move. Man was created that's at that same time. All right. Now man didn't have dominion over the beast, but they were like in a low state, but they weren't walking around grunting on all fours. They were walking upright, and did it separate the one from the other for the seventh part, namely where the water was gathered together might not hold them both. Unto Enoch thou gavest one part, which was dried up the third day, that he should dwell in the same part, wherein are 1,000 hills. But unto Leviathan thou gavest the seventh part, namely the moist, and hast kept him to be devoured, of whom thou wilt and when. Okay, so now let's go from there to back to the book of Genesis, the first chapter, the 26th and the 27th verse. It says, and the power said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So basically what they did was they gave man dominion. The Adamites, they gave them dominion over every creeping thing on every beast of the field. They set them up in a particular order. Because at first everything was on a level playing field, But then the Lord elevated man over these different beasts, and gave him more of an intelligence, made him to be more intelligent than the regular animals. But they still, at the time when they were created, they weren't in a beastly state, grunting and all that, like they would have you believe. They had a language back then. Yeah, when man was created, he was in a low state, and the Lord, gave man more understanding than the animals. They put him up on a higher level because the Lord had a purpose for man. So this is the book of Sirach, chapter 17, verses 1 on down. The Lord created man of the earth and turned him into it again. He gave them few days and a short time, and power also over the things therein, because everything that was under the earth, even the trees, whatever it is, the Lord gave man power over it. It says he endued them with strength by themselves and made them according to his image. That's why when you look at man on the earth, especially the Israelite man, so-called Negroes, West Indians, Haitians, Dominicans, Cubans, you know the sign of the different tribes. The angels up in the heavens, or we look like the angels up in the heavens, so you can understand. They have a beard, they have hair, they have arms. Even though you do have other beings up there that look different, but you have the main, like the Most High, Yahweh Shai, and certain other angels, Michael and all them. They look like actual men. All right. It says he's endured them with strength by themselves and made them according to his image, and put the fear of man upon all flesh, and gave them dominion over the beasts of and the fowls. See, that's why the Lord told Noah that the fear of thee and the dread of thee shall be upon all beasts, because from the beginning that's how the Lord set it up. He set up man to be Lord over everything. They received the use of the five operations of the Lord, and mainly the Israelite man, is going to be the main one that's going to have dominion and rule over all these people. They received the use of the five operations of the Lord. Why? Because the Lord set up man to be over beast. He didn't set man when the Lord created man. He didn't create man to be in a low beastly state, But when they first came out the waters, they were just in a low state, and the Lord gave them what? It said they received the use of the five operations of the Lord, which is what? Touch, taste, see, hear. There's another one that's escaping me right now, but I'll post it up for you. It says they received the use of the five operations of the Lord, and in the sixth place he imparted them understanding, because animals don't have understanding. Men has understanding. Why? Because the Lord imparted it unto us. And in the seventh, speech. See? So even from back then, there was an actual language being spoken. In the seventh, speech, an interpreter of the cogitations thereof. Now the word cogitation means your thoughts. So the speech that was given, understanding in the speech that was given, was to interpret what's in your mind, the thoughts of your mind. It says, counsel and a tongue and eyes, ears and a heart gave he them to understand. With all he filled them with the knowledge of understanding and showed them good and evil. Okay? He set his eyes upon their hearts that he might show them the greatness of his works. So bottom line, that's just letting you know that when man was created to be separate from beasts. He wasn't created to be in a beastly state, grunting like you see these animals do. Because let's read on. So the powers created man in his own image. In the image of the powers created he him. Male and female created he them. All right. So now let's go from there back to the book of 2nd Ezra, the 6th chapter, and the 53rd and the 54th verse. It says, and upon the 6th day thou gavest commandment unto the earth. Now this is the 6,000th year of the creation. So upon the 6th day thou gavest commandment unto the earth that before thee it should bring forth beasts, cattle, and creeping things. This is when sex was instituted, and multiplication of all these things that the Heavenly Father had created. Yahushua and the angels had created. It says, and after these, Adam also, whom thou madest Lord of all thy creatures, of him come we all, and the people also whom thou hast chosen. So if the Most High made Adam Lord over all creatures, will not he give him a language, something to speak, some words to utter, to be able to express himself? You're damn right. Now let's go from there to the book of Genesis 2, 15 to 17. And the Lord power, this is Yahweh's powers, took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. So the Lord put Adam in the Garden of Eden, which was in the east, around the area of Palestine, around the area of Jerusalem, Israel, all of that, Phoenicia, all of that land right there. That was all what the so-called scholars call the Fertile Crescent. That was the Garden of Eden. That was the richest vegetation and the richest part of the land and soil and everything back when the Lord created all things. All right. It says, and the Lord power commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat. So now the Most High, Yahweh and Yahushua and the angels commanded the man. So they spoke to him. So if they commanded the man, they spoke to him, that means he spoke, he did speak. He had a language. He understood them. It says, but of the tree of knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die. So let's find out, did Adam understand that? Was he in a beastly state, grunting, and the Most High and the angels, Yahushua and the angels started speaking to him, and he was just looking at them like they were crazy? Well, let's find out if he understood what they were saying. Let's go to Genesis 3 and 1. We're going to read the first 2 verses, and then we're going to skip around. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord power had made. Now this is talking about an actual man in the Garden of Eden, which had the spirit of Satan in him. All right, this is so-called white man back then that had color, but that's another lesson. And he said unto the woman, this is what the serpent said unto the woman. So the serpent was speaking. This man, this particular demon, this man that was described as a serpent, actually spoke to the woman. And who's that woman? Eve. Yea, hath the power said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? Let's see what Eve said. Did she start grunting back at him? Was she walking on was this an actual serpent and she was just walking on all fours and she was grunting at him? Let's find out. And the woman said, see, the woman spoke unto the serpent. And the woman said unto the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, the Most High said, or the power said, you shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, lest ye die. Now the angels didn't speak to the woman. They spoke to Adam. So that means he conveyed his thoughts from his mouth to his woman, and she understood exactly what he said. So they were speaking. They had a language, right? Now let's jump down to the 8th verse to about the 12th verse. It says, and they heard the voice of the Lord power walking in the garden in the cool of the day. So it said that Adam and his wife Eve, they both heard. It said they heard the voice of the Lord power walking in the garden in the cool of the day. So they understood. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord power amongst the trees of the garden. So if they didn't understand what he was saying, why did they hide themselves? And the Lord power called unto Adam and said unto him, where art thou? So this is the Yahweh and Yahweh Shai and the angels speaking unto Adam. And they said, where you at? And he said, I heard thy voice in the garden. So he answered them in the speech. He said, I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself. And he said, who told thee that thou was naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that thou shouldest not eat? And the man said, the woman whom thou gavest to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat. Which proves that he understood when they gave the commandment at the beginning. Because he came back and said, well, look, the woman that you gave me, she's the one that she ate of it and she gave it to me and I ate it. So he understood back then when they first spoke to him that he wasn't supposed to touch of that particular tree. But he did anyway, okay? No, it's a spiritual reason behind it, but we're going to leave it at that. Now let's deal with the situation of these devils trying to say that that in the beginning everything was grunting and groaning, because I believe it's a Space Odyssey 2001, I believe the movie is Stanley Kubrick, and there's a scene in there where they have I guess it's supposed to be going back to the creation, and they have a bunch of cavemen, with loincloths and bugged out and grunting and jumping around. So that's what they try to make you believe that the beginning of creation was. That there was no civilization, there was nothing, it was just bugged out, But it wasn't like that. That's Esau's history. So he's trying to incorporate these so-called white people's history into the beginning because they trying to make everybody believe that they are the people of the Bible, that they are the original man, which they're not the original man. They came out of the original man through a man named Jacob and a woman named Rebecca, which are two black man and a black woman. All right, now let's go to Job 30. Let's read the first verse. But now they that are younger than I have me in derision, whose fathers I would have disdained to have set with the dogs of my flock. Yea, one and two might the strength of their hands profit me, in whom old age was perished. For one in famine they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness, in former time desolate and waste. And this is you so-called white people's history here, you Edomites. You were this pertains to you, who cut up mallows by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat. They were driven forth from among men. Why? Because you were not fit to be among men. Because you're the devil, and you're a thief, and you're a liar. They cried after them as after a thief, to dwell in the cliffs of the valleys, in the caves of the earth, and in the rocks. So this is your history here. It says, among the bushes they brayed, under the nettles they were gathered together. So it says here, under the bushes they brayed. So when they were in this beastly state, which was a curse that was put on them, going back to the book of Genesis, it said that when they were in those bushes, they were braying. So now what does it mean to bray? Well, let's find out. The Hebrew word for bray in in Job 30 is nahok, nahwak, nahwak. Okay, that's a na, that's a ha, and that's a kwa. Nahwak. All right, nahwak. It says to bray, cry out. Now let's find out some more on that. To bray, use of an ass when hungry. All right, now let's go down here. Let's see what it says. This is Job 6 and 5. Doth the wild ass bray when he hath grass, or loweth the ox over his fodder? So basically, the bray is that noise that that a donkey makes, when it's hungry, So it starts making that noise, and those are those noises, those grunts that these devils were making when they were pushed up into the caves, So basically, it's just showing you that these devils, once again, they'll try to incorporate themselves into anything that has any sense of validity, any sense of goodness, for lack of better words, so that they can hide from their past and from their history, but they can't. So in this lesson, we proved that Adam did speak. He had a language, and the language that he spoke was Hebrew, based off of the names of their descendants. And then, of course, eventually the language was changed. So once the language was confounded and the other languages came in, other different names of those different languages started being spoken and given to descendants of those other peoples. So with that, I hope you brothers learned something. And to the next time, we'll come back with you with another topic, and our Lord's will to be edifying as well. All right, shalom.